Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I thought I would share with you my eyeshadow palette collection. Now I only really got into makeup just over a year ago. Last year was just really when I expanded my collection to more than just one palette. And I just thought it would be really fun to share with you all of the palettes that I have in my collection. I have sorted them out into little piles beside me just by brand, so I'll go through brand by brand, and then there's a few where I only have one palette from that brand, but I'll show you all the palettes, I'll show you the insides, and yeah, just thought I'd share my collection with you. Just starting off with all of my Beauty Bay palettes. My first palette is the Beauty Bay Bright palette, and this definitely is a staple in my makeup collection. It does have literally every shade you could possibly need. This is the palette that has got the mixture of the mattes and the shimmers. I did actually do a video series doing looks with all of these rows of shades, so if you have this palette and you're interested in seeing some other looks, then check those out. It's really versatile, really pigmented. I do love Beauty Bay formulas. It's got massive mirror in it, just a great all-round palette. Next up from Beauty Bay is the Origin palette. So same layout as the Bright palette. It's got 42 shades. This time we have got loads of neutrals. I haven't had an awful lot of use out of this palette, but it is always good to have a good staple neutral palette in your collection, in my opinion. Next up from Beauty Bay is the Nikki Palette. Again, I have recently done a video just testing this palette out. That of course is the beautiful packaging. I love the colour story in this palette. I think it is really beautiful. The shimmers are so buttery and so soft. Some of the matte shades can be a bit more difficult to work with, but persevere because it's just a really gorgeous palette. My final Beauty Bay palette is my Pastels Palette. Again, I've done a couple of videos using this. I really love this palette. Definitely more of a springtime palette. The shades are actually really quite pigmented, especially for pastels. I was quite worried when I first got this that they would be quite chalky and too soft, but they are really, really good, really easy to build up, really easy to blend, and yeah, I would definitely recommend having this palette. Next, I thought I would move on to all of my Colourpop palettes. I have actually only recently purchased Colourpop eyeshadows, or anything from Colourpop. First one up is Orange You Glad. So these are all of the orange shades. This is definitely a really good palette for the summer, really tropical orange shades. This glitter in the middle is incredible, and I just love the mixture of mattes and shimmers and just everything about this palette. Next up from Colourpop is the Mint To Be palette. So I purchased all of these Colourpop eyeshadow palettes at the same time, and these are all of the shades. I really love this palette. It does have some really lovely shimmers in it and a good balance, I think, of shimmer and mattes. I like that there's a couple of darker shades maybe for like autumn and winter, and then a few more lighter pastel shades just for the spring. So another really versatile palette. Next up in my collection is the Cloud Dye Vault. So this is the first one. This is In A Trance. So this is a nice mix of kind of pinks and purples and blue. It's got this really gorgeous silvery glitter in the middle. Next up is the Aura Out palette. So I think all of these palettes are quite pastel-y. So here's the shades for this one. Again, I have done a video doing a look with this palette and just going through all of the shades, so check that out if you want. I like that there's some more kind of yellowy tones in this, and also this pure white. I think this is really great to just layer over some of the other colours just to make them even more pastel. And finally from Cloud Dye Vault is Miss Bliss. I don't think I've actually used this one yet. I think it's the only one out of the three I've not used. So this is more kind of pastel-y coral, orangey pinks. Again, it's got a really beautiful glitter in the middle. Nice mix here of, yeah, some pinks on this side, moving towards kind of coral and orange. Just sticking with the Colourpop theme, next up I have got the Garden Variety palettes. The packaging for this is just so pretty. No mirror in this one though, which I was surprised about, but these are all of the shades. So really lovely, beautiful shades, loads of gorgeous shimmers and duochromes in this. I think I've used most of the shades in this palette. Again, they're really pigmented and just really easy to work with. Definitely one of my favourite Colourpop palettes. And lastly, just from Colourpop, and the palette that probably prompted me to do an order because I'd seen it and just thought it was absolutely stunning, and it is the Fade Into Hue. And I just think that this is such a beautiful palette, but look at those shades. They are stunning and they are so pigmented. The glitters are amazing. I mean, you can just see, just reflecting off the light here, but I just love this palette so much. Next up, just moving on to all of my Jeffree Star palettes. So first of all, I have got the Blood Sugar Mini. This is my most recent Jeffree Star palette. I actually won this in a giveaway, so I was really pleased to win that. I don't have the big Blood Sugar, so I haven't got any of these shades. As usual with Jeffree Star, nice big pan size, really pigmented, really easy to blend, and just really gorgeous shades. This shade here in the middle, Wisdom, I think was the new one that was added for the anniversary collection. It is just lovely. Next up from Jeffree Star is the Thirsty palette. Here are all of the shades. So this is a really great summer palette. I love these pops of colours here. All of these shimmers are stunning. They just stay on all day. Again, you've got the big pan size, the great formula. Next up from Jeffree Star, I have got the Blue Blood palette, and here is the packaging. I love it. This clasp, it just feels really fancy. All of the shades, which I always thought was a really blue palette, being Blue Blood, but when you kind of look at it, you realise there are these more neutral shades. So it is a really versatile palette, even though it is all blue. I've had loads of fun creating looks with this. The mattes are lovely, the shimmers are lovely. It's just what I would expect from one of his palettes. And lastly, up from Jeffree Star Cosmetics, and I think probably the first palette I bought last year, is the Conspiracy palette. I have used this so many times I cannot even keep track. So there's the packaging, and of course there is all of the shades. I love Diet Cola, probably one of my favourite shades out of all of my palettes. It's just a beautiful silver, so buttery, just a really great palette. Moving on to my palettes from e.l.f. and just starting off here, I've got this mini melt palette. This is the Mint To Be palette. Funnily enough, it's got the same name as, so these are both Mint To Be. Despite the fact that this is so tiny, I really love this palette. It's only got 4 shades, but I feel like I've created so many looks with this, and it's just such an easy kind of handbag or even pocket size palette. It's great. Next up, I've got the Earthen Ocean palette, and I must admit I haven't actually used this an awful lot, but it has got some great colours. It is a good palette. I don't really know why I haven't used it that much, to be honest. And lastly from e.l.f. is the Sweet Temptation palette. So I tend to just reach for this because it's got all of these kind of bronzers and everything in, but it does also have all of these eyeshadow shades in, and I think, to be honest with you, I don't think I've used any of them. Again, normally just reach for it for this, but this was a bargain when I got it, and even if it didn't have the eyeshadow shades in, I would have purchased it anyway. Next up, I have got this Catrice Cosmetics 5 in a box mini eyeshadow palette. This is their soft rose look, and I won this in a giveaway as well. Haven't had a chance to use this yet, but really interested by this shade here. It looks really lovely. I've never tried anything from Catrice before, so yeah, I definitely should give this a go. Next up, I have got my Alyssa Edwards palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is the only ABH palette I own. I picked this up in TK Maxx quite recently actually. So that's all of the shades. I really love this yellow here. Probably is my favourite shade from the palette. I like that we've got a pure white matte because it just means you can soften or pastel out any of the other shades in the palette. I've also got the Sample Beauty Painters Palette. This is the only palette that I have from Sample Beauty, and this is what all of the shades look like. I've used this loads of times. I haven't used all of the shades, but the shades that I have used have been really pigmented and really lovely. Again, done a couple of videos with this, so if you're interested in seeing how this palette works out, maybe check those out. And then my last kind of standalone palette is this Alter Ego Canyon palette. Again, I won this in another giveaway. Next up, I've got all of my Morphe palettes. So I have these 3 9-pan palettes here. So this is their old style packaging before they revamped them all and then charged full price again, but there we go. So this is the 9J Just a Crush palette. I do really like this palette. I have used this loads of times. Really nice pinks in it. Next up is the 9V Vintage Rose. Probably had a little less use out of this one just because some of the shades are a bit soft and a bit too neutral maybe for my liking, but nevertheless it's a really lovely palette. It's got some really nice shades, nice shimmers and everything here, so not a bad one. And lastly is the 9L Lavendaies palette. So this is full of loads of nice purples. Have used, I think, most of the shades in this. This one's got some nice kind of glittery flecks in. I really like this one here. Another good all-round palette. Also from Morphe, I have got the Morphe Jeffree Star Artistry palette. Here are all of the shades. Really versatile palette, but I must admit I don't really find myself reaching for this one too much. But it is a good palette, good formulas and everything, nice shades. And lastly from Morphe is just the James Charles palette. For a while this probably was my staple palette, and this is all of the shades, but again I don't really find myself reaching for it all that much at the moment, but it's got a good variety of shades. I think pretty much I've used all of them. Very pigmented, easy to use. It is a good Morphe palette. And lastly, I have got all of my Revolution palettes. So from their Friends collection, I have got the Take a Drive palette. It's got some really nice neutral shades in. I did actually do an entire review of this palette if you are interested in watching that. Sticking with the Friends theme, but from their most recent collection, is the Forever Flawless We Were on a Break palette. I love this palette. I have used this palette so much recently. It just screams summer to me. It's so bright, it's so vibrant, the colours are so easy to work with. I love their Forever Flawless range. I also have the Chandler palette from their Friends collection. So these are the shades in this one. Nice row of blue, nice row of green, a nice row of pinks. I have also done a review of this palette. And then last Friends palette is the Joey one, and I think I actually prefer this one to the Chandler one. Definitely very tropical vibes with all of these yellows and greens. It's a perfect palette for the summer. I also have this 9-pan neon palette. So this is their Electric Dreams palette. And nice variety of shades. I don't think I've used them all, but the shimmers in this are really great. Also got this Starry Eyed palette. I love the packaging. I think it's really fun. I actually got this in a mystery box from my boyfriend. So really nice blues and teals in this. I have also got this Revolution Reloaded jeweled palette. All of the shades in this are shimmers. So I find I don't reach for this a lot. I tend to just reach for it for the odd 1 or 2 shades. And then I've also got these two that both also came in the mystery box from my boyfriend. So this is the I Heart Revolution Angel Heart palette. I really like this palette. I feel like this side's a bit more neutral and this side's a bit more kind of plummy or glam, but really great formulas. And then my favourite out of the two is definitely the Unicorn Hearts palette. I really love these kind of purple lilac shades. They definitely look a bit more different on the eye than they do in the palette. In fact, I think they look better on the eye than they do in the palette, but this is really great. Next from Revolution, I have got this Colourbook palette, and this is 05. So this is all of the blues and the greens. So this half is all of the shimmer shades, and this half is all of the matte shades. Don't reach for this one an awful lot. I feel like quite a few of the shades are quite similar, or I have them in other palettes, but it is a good palette, don't get me wrong. Next up, also from Revolution, I have got this Courage palette. I haven't used this yet because I have only just recently got this palette, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of Garden Variety with these pops of purple and pink and green, but I'm looking forward to getting stuck into using this palette. And then last two kind of come as a bit of a pair. So again, from the Forever Flawless range. So first up is the Revolution Forever Flawless Fire palette. I love this palette. I think it's probably better for autumn. The formula's great. I love all of the shades. And then last but not least, the Forever Flawless Ice palettes. And this is a really great dupe actually of the Jeffree Star Blue Blood. Did do a video about that, so check that out if you want. These are all of the shades. This shade is gorgeous. I like the mixture of blues and neutrals, shimmers and mattes. Great formula. Another great palette from Revolution. And that is my entire eyeshadow palette collection. I was a bit shocked in how many I actually own, but I love a bargain, I love a deal. I think most of these I did pick up on sale, or I won in giveaways, or were gifted to me, you know, birthday, Christmas, etc. I will try to remember to pop all of the details for all of the palettes in the description if you are interested in checking them out. Do let me know what's your favourite palette, if you have any of these from my collection, which ones you like. But thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up, leave a comment, and if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you again in my next video.